This is my husband Randy, and my son Adam is recording. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday. They're so tiny we can't see them, so big we can't stop them. How are we going to prevent them? My name is Nancy Dubson, and I'm a registered nurse. I took a public health class last year, and I did an internship with that, where I learned about a lot of infectious diseases. And so I also read about them through academic literature, such as information from the CDC and the Department of Health, as I prepared for this presentation. Hand hygiene, 20 seconds of washing our hands with soap and water and a dry towel. Running water, warm temperature, it's the best to get the germs off. Or using a hand sanitizer, a dime-size area, something that contains an antimicrobial. We want to wash our hands, getting all the way around them and under our fingernails, around our hands, between our fingers, and the back of our hands, so we make sure we get the germs off. The Centers for Disease Control and the Department of Health, they all show us how to wash our hands correctly. We want to make sure that we wash our hands so we have a healthy health action behavior to have optimal well-being. Did you know that 66% of the men wash their hands and about 75% of the women? A guy named Elwood did a study at the Minnesota State Fair, and he found out that about 30% of the people don't bother to wash their hands after they use the restroom. Store carts, they might only get washed once every 6 months. Think about the germs on them. Use those wipes. A lot of people don't, but I think we should all start using them. Zambrora did a research on that. Infectious diseases are spread through things like touching, inhaling, and ingesting. Stanhope and Lancaster. People may be unaware that they're carriers of infections, and they might be spreading them to other people. So we always have to consider, even though they look well or we feel well, we may not be. We might have something going on. Infections, they are viral, bacterial, or parasitic, and also fungal. CDC says this in Stanhope and Lancaster, my public health book. Viral infections are transmitted by things like blood, body fluid, or even feces. The hepatitis A is spread if people go to the bathroom and don't wash their hands. Then they happen to go cook and make food, and we eat it, we can get the hepatitis A. So we want to make sure that we wash our hands and the people making our food have clean hands too. And the influenza is another virus. We get flu shots for influenza. Every year it kind of mutates and changes. And so we get a different kind of flu shot every year. We want to make sure we get those flu shots, and we want to watch out so we don't get it from other people. Hand to mouth, hand to hand, or even close airborne. If I have the flu and I don't know it, it's a week before I have it, I can start spreading it to you if I'm going to get it, just by droplets coming out of my mouth. The CDC reports this. Protections from viruses are important. Proper hand washing, hand sanitizer, washing your hands often during flu season, and using that soap and water and clean towels. And also having good oral hygiene so that we don't spread bacteria. Immunizations are important. Get your immunizations. They help all of us. The Minnesota Department of Health is a big enforcer for immunizations. Prevention first. Remember, 30% of the people walking around don't wash their hands. 70% do. Immunizations prevent viruses. And they help also do some treatments. Some immunizations are used for bacterial things, but primarily they're for viruses. Bacteria is treated with antibiotics. Don't take an antibiotic if you have a virus. It won't work. And then we have problems with resistance of antibiotics. Elwood did a research on cattle and saying how cattle that got too much bacteria ended up with resistant MRSA in the meat. And so a lot of the meat we get even has MRSA on it now, as well as things like the E. coli, the bacteria that we're going to talk about next. Staphylococcus aureus and methicillin-resistant Staph aureus. Those diseases are bacterial. They live on surfaces. They stay there for a little while. So we can go around later and touch it, and we can get it. If we have a crack in our skin and somebody else has a cut or has a crack, they have MRSA and they touch us, we can get it from them. So if you have cuts or open wounds, cover them up. Use lotions or moisturizing soap to keep your hand moisturized so that you don't have cracks and aren't as prone to getting infections. The MRSA statistics talk about things like this, and the Stanhope book also does. E. coli, it's nasty, gives us diarrhea, stomach cramps. We feel awful. Antibiotics don't help it. We normally have some E. coli in our colon, but what happens when we eat some meat that's not totally cooked, or some meat that's loaded with E. coli, or pick some lettuce, and the lettuce has E. coli on it because it comes from manure that's been used to fertilize and we don't get it washed off, we can get an overload of it. It makes us really sick. And so we don't want to have that happen. It's a bad thing. In my pediatrics book from Perry, she talks about how E. coli is really hard on little kids. When we wash our hands to get rid of bacterial infections, we want to wash them well, like I talked about, and use either the disinfectant or the soap and water. We want to clean surfaces, using things like Clorox wipes to make sure we get rid of that 99.9% of bacteria on there. And we want to practice good oral hygiene. Don't share utensils and toothbrushes. It can spread diseases. The Minnesota Department of Health talks about how we can get AIDS or HIV, we can get hepatitis, things like that, from blood on toothbrushes, and then we share them. I've just talked about sort of germs and stuff that we don't see, but now I'm going to talk about squiggly things, the parasites. 30% of children in the United States have parasites. That's a lot. And adults can get them too. They're transferred when the eggs are laid outside the body near the rectum at night by the females, and we scratch our bottoms, and then we make food or we touch our hands and our mouth, and we spread those parasites. Those eggs get in and they start all their cycle all over again, making new worms in our intestines. Hookworms and whipworms, they're more common in adults. They come from sandy soils, and they crawl into our skin and travel through our body up to our heart, and it goes through our lungs, and then we cough them up and we swallow them back down, and they attach to our intestines and they grow and they become adults and they lay eggs and then they pass through us, and that's a whole cycle. And then there's Giardia, dirty water, Enterococcus. Unlucky people, bad GI problems. You get really sick and you feel kind of rotten. Perry and also the humanillness.com talked about these diseases, and they're not fun to have. Parasites can be taken care of by washing our hands, using our cleanser. Think about those worms, and we sure aren't going to want to have to be around them. We're going to want to wash. Wash our fruits and vegetables, have safe drinking water. Don't go outside barefoot. Put sandals on when you're in the shower, if you're at the gym. Wear gloves when you dig in the dirt. And try not to touch our faces, because that's where we're going to spread them to ourselves. Prevention's the key. They're so tiny that we can't see them, so big we can't stop them. We must do something to prevent them. We want to wash off the MRSA, the E. coli, the parasite eggs, all those issue things. They're opportunistic. They're going to get to us if they can. We want to be opportunistic and get rid of them. Promote physical wellness and wash your hands. Sing happy birthday. Wash your hands 20 seconds. That's all it takes to freedom from viruses, bacteria, and parasites. Thank you. Wash your hands.